Salut! Asculți podcastul URBOTECA. Suntem în sezonul 2. Thank you so much for talking to me tonight. This is the first online recording for an episode for URBOTECA podcast, and it's the first time we will only speak in English. But I'm so glad, Ilka, that you are here with us and we get to talk to you as well.
My pleasure.
Tonight we'll talk about the beta exhibition, the main exhibition in 2020 beta edition. And because it only ended recently, I would like to ask you all to tell me what are your conclusions now that it's still fresh after a whole month with the main exhibition?
Who wants to start?
I can start. Thank you very much for the invitation, Oana. We are also very glad to be here. It's still a bit fresh, but however, the one thing that I can already consider a very important conclusion, let's say, is the fact that while gathering all the projects for this main exhibition of the Beta 2020, Anca and I were mostly considering the local projects. And I think that we can already say that while knowing these projects individually, because of course we have known them, most of the projects that we have exhibited, we have known them before, seeing them all together made us realize that we really have a, let's say, wide community of responsible projects in the local scene. And I think that for us, it was extremely important to see them together and to realize that maybe even through imagining, let's say, working community or working groups or association between them, that would really empower them more. But there are already, let's say, enough of them in order to consider the fact that they are, a relevant voice, let's say, in the field of architecture.
For me, it was very interesting also to see so many local projects that I didn't know before, of course. And I think within the combination with the international and the local projects, I think this is also a very nice moment. Unfortunately, it was not possible to invite all the international guests due to the pandemic situation, because it would have been great if there would be kind of networking between the local and international projects, because many of the projects really follow the same goals, let's say. But still, I mean, that they were presented together and that they will also be presented in some publication together. As far as I understood, they will follow a publication with all the projects, is really great. Plus that the exhibition will travel, and so far I think there are 2 more venues fixed, but I can also imagine more. And maybe it would be possible even to add or to kind of really make it a long-term traveling exhibition. And for every venue, maybe we can add some more local projects to it. I don't know. It's an idea I had, and I think it would be nice because the topic is so relevant and a lot of people deal with it. And it would be nice to use the exhibition and also the traveling exhibition as a tool to connect people.
I'm also very happy about this dialogue between the local and the international projects, because we actually envisioned from the beginning, or let's say it was some kind of guideline for us to make this exhibition very accessible. And to be accessible not only to the discipline, to architects, but to people outside, let's say, the architecture field. And for example, earlier, I just read an article about some high school students that visited the exhibition. They were really describing projects that made an impression on them.
Thank you. I've been reading the same article today, Anca, and I was impressed, besides of the fact that one of the teenagers said that he's taking into consideration an architecture study field. What impressed me the most was the impression. Someone said something like, I didn't know that architecture can mean this much, or something like that, and that it can cover such a large area.
Yeah, I also remember this. In the same article, there was one of the children saying that they are imagining this project named Clasera which is in Romanian, Ilka, that means a mixture between a classroom, let's say, and a greenhouse. And I also think this is very, very nice because, we were in a way imagining this space exactly this way as a mixture between a school and a greenhouse, let's say.
Yeah, maybe just to add to this, I mean, it's very nice to think that the installation space itself, the exhibition and installation space itself that we created could be, again, a one-to-one proposal or one-to-one model for maybe a different kind of working or learning environment. That's very nice.
For me, it was the most refreshing, and I don't know how to put it not to sound too cheesy, but refreshing, the most refreshing experience I've had since the pandemic period started, when I got to visit Beta and the main exhibition. And it was even more than I expected, though we've already talked about it, and you've told us something, me and the URBOTECA team, about how it will be. Well, it was more than I could have imagined only by seeing the drawings and the plans for the exhibition. And the fact that you got to bring the nature in and to integrate it so well with the objects, which I dare to say that for who knows your activity, Stardust Architects, it was kind of a signature exhibition. It's easy for someone who follows your work to associate the exhibition with you, from my point of view. I want to go back to the theme of Beta 2020. First of all, why enough is enough? Why overall this need you all resonate with to be responsible towards the built environment?
Yeah, I think the kind of climate change and also the degrees of variety of different kind of animals and plants is one of the most threatening things. I mean, besides the pandemic right now, and architects and planners have a big impact on that. So it was very clear for us that the exhibition should deal with this topic. And a problem is that the industry, the building industry, just consumes too much land, too much resources, and it produces too much emissions. So enough is enough. On one hand, of course, to say, well, we have to stop this business as usual. We have to come up with new ideas. We can make an impact. And on the other hand, it also is enough. So we have enough, and we collected so many projects by architects and designers and initiatives that show that how you can make do with what we have, and in a very beautiful way, without the feeling of, oh my God, I have to sacrifice everything and I need to reduce and I can't live the life I want. I mean, all the projects we show that we can have a beautiful life by reusing stuff, by repairing and so on. So I think that was the idea behind the title.
And how do you, Ilka Ruby, resonate with this perspective besides the theme of Beta 2020?
I think many, especially younger architects, really think before they do something new, look at what is there already and try to work with what is already there. I think it's by now, especially in a younger generation, it's a very common attitude, which is really great. Because when I studied, everything you would do with kind of existing building was kind of considered, okay, yeah, well, it's not so interesting. It's a little bit boring. And but if you do something new, fancy, then wow, that's great, the new stuff. And I think this has completely changed. I think everything that is now considered, okay, you design something in something it's existing, you add, you transform, is considered super interesting for many architects. And that's great. And I hope that this kind of attitude will continue. I'm not working as an architect anymore. I mean, I was trained as an architect, but I'm doing books on architecture and exhibitions. And of course, also in the publications we do, it's one of our topics. So how do we deal with the existing and what can we do with it? what is already there? How can we deal with materials? This kind of ideas. Of course, I try also in the publishing work to bring to the forefront.
What about you, Anca?
I totally agree with Ilka that there are so many, inspiring young practices. We saw that even in the projects in the exhibition, and we value that a lot. But on the other hand, for example, in the architectural education, I still feel that there is this fascination for the new object. And I really believe that it is important, this, let's call it the responsibility moment, when you actually become more aware of the consequences of your work, of the impact that object or that, project would have on, on the users' lives, on the environment and so on. And I believe it's really important, and of course, not only in architecture, but we have to have this moment when you actually think of the consequences. And for example, I remember that a former student who was in her second year of studies was telling me that she attended a summer school, a workshop at Petrila, and she was describing this moment when she had to draw on the ground with a piece of chalk the limits of something that they had to build there. I don't remember what. And she actually had this, feeling of, oh my God, it's not a line it's not just a simple line that I draw on a paper, but it will actually, mean something. Something will be built after my line. And she had this, moment that I think it was transformatory in a way. She's actually now volunteering in a lot of, for example, ambulance for monuments and a lot of summer schools. And in a very responsible way.
Brîndușa, how do you feel about this?
From my point of view, I think another thing that was pretty important was this idea of giving voice to the not only voice, but acknowledging that the thing that these projects, which are self-initiated and part of them, we can consider them marginal, is a very important thing. Because, unfortunately, with the risk of emphasizing what Anca already said in the academic discourse, exactly as you said before, actually, and as we felt it on our own when we were students, in the academic discourse, this type of projects, a very big part of the projects that we have exhibited are self-initiated projects. So this idea of having the faith that you can take a very small part of the very big responsibility, of course, which is overwhelming, you can take a very small part of this responsibility and make it your own and be the initiator of a very small initiative that can actually afterwards become even your main practice. There are some projects in the exhibition that have actually started as a diploma project, and right now they are the main practice of those people. In a way, they are still marginal, even though we see them in the biennials, even though we see them awarded in the reviews, architectural reviews, and so forth. However, this discourse is still not a core discourse, let's say, and we have to consider them solutions because part of them actually, even the fact that they are in a way born inside a crisis. They are dealing with very scarce resources. The fact that they are marginal actually acknowledges them as solutions. So researching them, looking at them and testing them along for different other contexts is extremely important.
Thank you. Because under the title Enough is Enough, you stated a very, very bold question. You also kind of answered, do we really have to build? And we always should consider no as a possible answer, which is fair. And as you said, I think many young professionals resonate with this attitude, but it's still conflicted, as we were all saying, with the profession of architectures and with what we are taught in school and in the professional experience, even by the attitudes we see around towards the built environment we should do as architects. And this is, I think, somehow the meaning of the profession got a bit lost in translation. That's why your theme for Beta 2020 and the 8 chapters are so relevant today. I want to ask you more about how you decided to have all those themes that I will state shortly, and then please you tell me about them in detail. So they are mapping local resources, remembering crafts, repairing what is broken, reusing what is abandoned, recovering materials, discovering new materials, caring for community, and sharing knowledge.
Yeah, in our research phase, we actually thought of this perspective, let's say, of this way of addressing responsibility, of a sort of let's say, a scale of priorities, some responsible claims and steps that we thought would be responsible to proceed the project. So we imagined these kind of questions in a sort of, let's say, a scale that we would address before starting to draw. And the preamble and the key question is that if we really have to build, and that it is important to take into consideration, the answer no, because I think the architectural discipline is mostly about building. It doesn't even take into account that you could answer no. And then we thought it is really important to look towards what we have and to see what is around us and to value what we already have. And we can start by, this inventory and research of the local resources, just to see what we have around, what is close to us, and to try to map those resources. Then, of course, to reuse what is abandoned, the unused buildings, to repair what is broken, to recover materials, and to try to integrate this into the process of design from the project phase. And, for example, to understand for that repair and maintenance can be like, integrated into the project and can be a craft in itself. Then remembering crafts and also trying to integrate crafts into the contemporary practice. And then if we really have to start from scratch, to start building something new, we thought that it was important to really invest time, let's say, in the research of materials that are kind to the environment, and then to develop this sense of generosity and community by sharing and participation practices and initiatives. And then, of course, we thought that it is really important to share this model of good practices and share knowledge in a way that we can all learn from each other and to learn from these experiences and to learn together. So that was, let's say, the logic of this steps, this sequence of steps.
I would add, because you already stated the fact that, of course, this question is in a way, or might be perceived as a statement against architecture. And of course, we are aware of the fact that this is a hard thing to say. However, I think that it is the first step that we have to do is to admit that we are facing a crisis. Because when you acknowledge the fact that you are facing a crisis, then you also acknowledge the fact that you cannot do stuff exactly as you did before.
I was going to ask you about the manifesto. It's also so strong, and by the way, the manifesto is online on the Beta 2020 Beta City website. I'm so glad that this event had such wide visibility and the communication is very good. Because of all the online events, it could get to a lot of people that wouldn't regularly maybe go to Timișoara just for Beta. It starts with, it's time for architects to step up and assume greater responsibility for fate of our planet and fully recognize the environmental impact of their work. But still, architecture as a profession has this responsibility towards the society. And this climate crisis we are facing is impacting the society. How did we get in this point where we feel the need to bring this to the attention of the profession, that they have to assume to take up more responsibility? How did it get lost along the way?
The need to build responsible. Now, of course, we say, yeah, this was always there. And I mean, it started already very early. There are very early attempts to try to use the sun, but it was always more considered a niche of architecture. Although we know that climate change is happening for some time, but only recent years we really feel it. And it makes a big difference if you try to tell someone about something you can't really feel and see, as opposed to if you really feel and see the consequences. And this is something that just happened over the last years. We feel and see the consequences of climate change and of the destruction of nature. And this makes it way urgent now and way more easier to explain people why it is important. And on the other hand, it made it more easy for people to ignore it beforehand, because it was maybe some kind of abstract number in some kind of distant future. But now, of course, you yourself and your kids will feel the consequences. So I think that's a big difference.
Why a manifesto?
I think that before calling it a manifesto, I think we started by calling it a structure. We called it in many different ways, the sum of the claims, and we went to different phases in building this structure. And in a way, it remained a structure. And the very interesting thing is that it got mirrored, let's say, in the actual structure of the space, because we had this very nice coincidence between the number of the claims and the spatial division that this whole has. I don't know if we decided that we definitely need a manifesto, but we got to the conclusion that we need to state what are, from our point of view, some of the steps that we can do and we can start doing.
Now I'd like to ask you a bit about the exhibition itself, about how you've organized it, what was the succession of themes through the space, what was the circuit you followed and why in that order, maybe a bit about bringing the plants inside and integrating them so well, and also if the pandemic conditions influenced your project and vision in any way.
The idea with the garden was a very early idea that came up. And the idea behind was not only that we wanted to have a kind of relaxing and beautiful exhibition space that somehow, and the garden topic, of course, resonates very much with the topic of the exhibition, but that we also wanted to leave something so that there is something left from the exhibition in the city. And the idea of the garden was, okay, this garden will then go into the city and find a home in the city. So that to give something back to the city, that it's not only this event that is taking place for weeks or a month and then it's gone, but there is something kind of physical that stays. Not only kind of something, of course, there's something that will stay because the exhibition was there and their ideas planted in the city, let's say, or in the heads of the people who visited the exhibition. But we wanted also to have something physical to give back to the city.
And the very, very good thing that happened afterwards was the fact that during the exhibition, Alexandra, so the beta team coordinator, Alexandra Maria Rigler, along with Raluca Rusu and Alex Ciobotă, who were the landscape designers, and a representative of the local administration, they managed to find together the place in which the beta garden is about to, or maybe it has already been moved. It was very important for us to find this place and to make sure that this place will actually be suitable for this garden. We are very glad that they found a space in which there has already been a bit of a communitary practice, meaning that Alexandra had already had some community events there. So there is a community which is eager to receive this and to take care of it, actually, even though the local administration is the principal carer, let's say, at the beginning.
I would also add that it was a very nice and new experience for us, the collaboration with Alex Ciobotă and Raluca Rusu, the landscape designers. And it was nice, very nice, because we started to work together, let's say, quite early, I would say, into the project. It was actually funny that at the beginning we imagined this garden and we did this drawing, very architectural drawing with a grid of trees. And then they worked on that grid and everything developed so nice. And they actually had this concept that the plans would also address let's say, the manifesto, the themes that we brought together. The projects, most of them were displayed on these ladders, let's say, that we chose these elements because we thought they are, let's say, a common element between architecture and plans. And then we had some moments into this space. We had a lecture place, which was marked by, we called it the lecture cone. It was this very light structure suspended from the ceiling. And then we had this kitchen that was, let's say, the lively place of the exhibition. We wanted to display there, let's say, the ingredients and the tools of the processes that stay behind the project. And also that was the, let's say, the place where the workshops happened during the exhibition. Yeah, and also besides this main hall, we had some installations in some rooms that were some, let's say, some small exhibitions in themselves.
There was another nice coincidence that I always like to mention, which is the fact that we have discovered at our second visit in the space that inside the hall there was this yellow structure, light, very, very nice yellow structure, which is like, in a way, a character inside this big hall, and its purpose was actually to repair the trams. Therefore, after this visit, we have immediately decided that there is also a coincidence that we cannot leave aside. So all the projects that we had in the re-category, as we called it, so reusing, repairing, remembering, and recovering, all these 4 groups, they kind of gathered together around this yellow structure. So they made a more powerful group, let's say. It was also a very nice way to play with the space.
Yeah, and we also tried to, of course, reuse existing material. We reused material that from another exhibition, like tables and so on, and also this big community table that we integrated. Also for the exhibition, we mapped what is there, what do we have, what can we reuse for our own exhibition before we build new stuff.
So you followed yourselves while developing the exhibition, the core principles of your themes for Beta 2020. I think it's great that the place where it happened was the old building of the tram depot, which will actually gain a new use after the architecture competition. But this kind of temporary repurposing a space is a means that could easily happen with a lot of abandoned buildings and spaces, even without giving them a permanent new purpose.
I wanted to add before that we didn't mention another, let's say, moment of the exhibition, which is this interactive map of Timișoara, the garden map, let's call it, which is exactly at the entrance at the mapping resources area, let's say. And that is, let's say, a very small scale garden that follows the map of Timișoara, where visitors were invited to plant a seed and to react and to interact with the city and to leave a note and to, make a proposal for Timișoara, the city of Timișoara. And it was actually very nice. It was an installation that we developed together with an artist, Vlad Albu, and with the landscape designers, obviously. And at the beginning, we were a bit afraid that maybe, the seeds won't grow. And it was nice to see after a while that it was really full of plants and full of notes.
How did you choose the projects and the initiatives you included in the exhibition?
We started just researching projects and making a big selection. And then we had this one workshop in Berlin where we all met. For each project, we had images, and we made this big kind of wall where we kind of put all the images on the wall, and then we were rearranging it and taking out. And so that was the first time when we brought everything together, physically together, and also with images. And that was also the last time we could actually meet before the pandemic kind of stopped any face-to-face meeting, and only the rest we had to go on video conferences. We had this kind of selection and tried to, it was still too much. So we reduced it. And then at some point, of course, we got in contact with the architects, and that sometimes made the selection smaller because some didn't respond, or we found out it's not the right kind of, it doesn't fit so well, or whatever. So, but yeah, and by this, it got more and more refined. And we had this weekly video conferences where we would talk about the status of the exhibition and where we were discussing all the questions we had.
Actually, it was pretty harsh in many moments to do the selection, and I think we still had too many projects in the exhibition because this made a very long journey in order to just get an idea about it and maybe come twice or more. However, I think what was also working for us for the selection was the fact that we knew that we wanted to, in a way, have a wide range of answers for each category, let's say. So we knew that we wanted to have geographical contexts and cultural and social contexts which are different. So it was also very important, this dialogue between the local and the international. You can see the diversity of the projects and see them together and maybe imagine, let's say, a dialogue between them. And this dialogue between, for example, the projects that were self-initiated, but also putting them together with projects that have, however, had private client or a public client. So imagining the same situation maybe in the future being commissioned, the same project being commissioned by a different client, let's say.
It was also very important for us to make the exhibition as physical as possible. And it's often a problem with architecture exhibitions that you have a lot of plans, drawings to look at, which is also difficult often for people who are not architects. They're not trained to read a plan or a section. So for us, it was really important to find how could we communicate it very, very understandable for everyone, also for people who are not from the field of architecture, but just interested in this topic. So we were working with a lot of images and with a lot of objects. So for us, it was important to find as many objects and models, material objects, to make it really haptic and less abstract, the exhibition.
Could you name a few projects or initiatives from all this broad selection that are more in agreement with you? In Romanian, we would say pe sufletul vostru, but I don't really know how to say it in English. The ones you felt that you resonate most with, or that you appreciated most, or that you found more, I don't know, relevant. In a subjective way, again, not as a critic, personal opinion.
A heart's choice, let's say. In a way, in an unexpected way for me, for example, my heart category, let's say, became the mapping resources category. I also have a project that I was enthusiastically talking about at each guided tour that we had, and that is the project of the students, I Am Wow, because I really think that they are kind of, in a way, they were also positioned in the center, and I really think that they are illustrating very well this power of believing that every one of us can group with his local power and do a very small change. But I would rather, however, mention the category, which is mapping local resources, because it also illustrates the way the projects work together, actually. It has become actually my favorite category also because researching this area of projects, I have realized something that I didn't knew before, which is the fact that this instrument, this tool, which you could say is an instrument of the geographers or something which is, of course, borrowed from a different domain, from a different field, actually right now, let's say, present in many other fields. And in architecture is becoming more and more considered a very important tool. And it starts to penetrate the academic environment. And I think this is very, very good. But the projects that we had exhibited in this category, I would mention only 3 of them. And I like very much to look at them together. So we had the Gardens of Timișoara, which is a project that started as a diploma project. It belongs to Andreea Pătroi. So she started just by looking to the informal gardens born around the collective buildings for food or for flowers, but this informal way of using a resource which is nearby. And she developed a lot from there, not only through her diploma project, but also being a part of the local administration and being a part of the group who worked for the general urbanistic plan. So it became much more than the diploma project, and this is very important. We had there nearby a project which is happening in Bucharest, which has been initiated by Cismici Association. So it's the Garden of People, Grădina cu Oameni, which is also started as a vision, and they had 3 years for implementing this project, which was about also small gardens around the collective buildings nearby the Cismici garden. And that was also extremely important as a model for us because they have, let's say, used this pretext of gardening for empowering the community, for exercising neighborhood, for exercising relationship between the people that are living together and getting to know each other through gardening, let's say. And we also had there the project, The Healing Grid, Timișoara Verde Albastră, which is a very responsible and relevant way of looking towards what we have and imagining what we can do with something that nowadays is not considered valuable. So this project is mapping the drainage channels around Timișoara and is looking at them as a very important resource, imagining them as blue-green corridors that can, of course, serve not only humans, but also a lot of birds and all others inhabitants of the city that we really need. So I think that is my favorite part of the exhibition, I'd say.
So it's a very difficult question. It's really hard to pick just a few projects. I will start by mentioning all those projects that actually get the students out of the university and they get them in touch with real actors, real challenges of the city. I would mention here all the summer schools that I think they're doing an amazing job because they are, first of all, creating this sense of community between students. Then you get to learn by doing, and I think this is so important because through this method, you actually really learn in a different way and things kind of remain with you. Most of the summer school work with local resources, with craftsmen and so on. And that is kind of touches, let's say, a lot of those sub-themes that we found important for the exhibition. Then, of course, I would mention URBOTECA and the practice of Studio Bazaar, and also this Citizens and the Cities in Ecological Transition, which is an amazing thing that is taking place, is happening right now on the educational level, let's say. Actually, many projects in the exhibition, even if they are displayed in a different category, have this practice of summer schools, and that is really, really important. But if I would have to pick a sole category, that would be remembering craftsmen. And I really loved the international projects, actually. What Anna Heringer is doing, I think is really, really amazing practice. And then the case design practice overall, besides their amazing installation that was really explaining their project for the Avasara Academy through so different perspectives that it was so complex and nicely explained, let's say. From the local scene, I would mention the practice of craft-made, which they also had an installation. Their work is really inspiring, and they had this, this wood crane. They built a historical tool in a way, and they also had their manifesto displayed there. The last one would be the practice of atelier terapia. I knew about them before and followed a bit their work online, but actually learned a bit more through our, emails and dialogues. They are doing an exceptional job, building awareness on this heritage of working with earth. One of their initiatives is this festival, Regio Earth, which is taking place every year. It's an itinerary festival and is taking place in a different spot. And they kind of build a community through this festival of people who share their experience of working with Earth, and they are learning together. And I really hope that it will take place next year in May, because we really want to attend it. So that was my selection. I still feel that I didn't mention all the projects that I loved.
Yeah, it's very difficult to pick out now like 2 or 3 projects, because all of them, of course, were relevant and all of them are very important for me. But maybe 2 projects that are, for me personally, very important, because I follow the work of these architects for quite some time. One would be the work of Ilka Ruby and the transformation of these 530 housing units in Bordeaux. This is very interesting for me because, first of all, it's interesting when you look at the work of Ilka Ruby and how they started with very small single-family housing, where they already applied this idea of using winter garden structures to enlarge the living space and create this kind of in-between climate inside and outside. Further develop this topic over time into really big scale, like the latest project in Bordeaux, where they transformed the existing building from the 60s, and kind of by taking away the facades with the small windows, replacing them by really large floor-to-ceiling glazing, and adding these kind of 3 meter of winter gardens to it, so that each apartment would kind of get almost double the space they had before, without the rent being increased. And all the transformation took place while the people were still living there, so nobody had to leave, and this kind of community stayed intact. I think that's an amazing project, because it's more than a project, but it's a principle that you can imagine being applied to many situations. So this is, for me, one project that I personally very attached to. Another project would be the Flussbad Berlin. I'm from Berlin, so of course this is also a project I follow for some time, and I think also it's great to see how the development of this project from the beginning, where kind of some people doing a kind of a club, artists and architects running this kind of club at the River Spree, were thinking, okay, wouldn't it be great if we could swim in the river? You can't do this because the water quality is not good enough. And okay, what do we have to do? We have to clean the water to make it possible to swim. And by this kind of, maybe at the beginning, very hedonistic idea, out of this idea developed a really big project, which is now supported by the majority of the political parties, and that received, I think, maybe 6 million. I would need to check that again, of public funding. This is also a very positive and encouraging project, where you see what can happen or something out of a very small idea, and how this idea could be developed and made into a very big project that is kind of supported by a lot of people and also by a lot of politicians, by society in a way. And of course, I would love to, at some point, have the possibility to swim in clean water in the Spree. I mean, that would be wonderful. These are 2 projects I like very much. Also the housing project of La Borda community in Barcelona. The project, the La Borda project, is not only built in a sustainable way, I mean with sustainable materials, and the way the sun is used to heat the space and so on, but also the community that they built and the amount of shared spaces they included into the building is really, I find, really amazing and a very good example of what kind of housing we need today for kind of society that is not only consists out of these kind of traditional family with kind of 2 adults, 2 parents with 2 kids. So a lot of people live together. There are elderly people and younger people, and that's a very great project. Also, the result in terms of aesthetics, I think it's beautiful. It's just a really, really beautiful project too. After all, we are all still architects and we like beautiful things. When all this comes together, it's just very nice.
Thank you so much. This was it. I think we've covered everything, and I'm really grateful for having this time with you. I feel that the talk in itself is way wider, and it was really, really nice talking to you. Thank you so much. It didn't really hurt to have this meeting online and record it. I hope it was okay for you as well.
I mean, we are used to this now, to this kind of mode. So it was very nice, and happy meeting you again, Anca, Brîndușa.
Yeah, we haven't
after some time.
Yeah, we haven't another from the opening, so it's really good to see you, Ilka.
To reconnect, yeah.
And Oana, thank you so much. It was for the invitation, and it was a really nice meeting.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very nice, and hope to see you sometimes again face to face.
Yeah, we are also hoping that.
Mulțumim că ne-ai ascultat! Dacă ți-a plăcut, dă mai departe episodul și urmărește URBOTECA pe Facebook și Instagram. URBOTECA Podcast este un proiect cultural susținut de Ordinul Arhitecților din România prin timpul de arhitectură. Tema muzicală, Mihai Balabaș. Identitatea vizuală, Răzvan Zamfira. Înregistrarea și editarea episoadelor, Sergiu Brega.